Alright guys and gals, I just want to do a video on evacuation setups, what I personally use, what works for me, go over some of the equipment that I like, the brands that I like, and so on and so on. First we'll start with the vacuum pump. I prefer the JBs. This one's a 7 CFM. I do run what I call Christmas tree, which is this thing here, where it gives me two 3/8 ports, and then I put a ball valve and a micron gauge right on top there, so I leave this shut until my vacuum level gets down real low and the pump starts to quiet down. I know I'm in a deep vacuum. I'll go ahead and open that up and read the system's evacuation level. I run JB hoses. These are a 3/8 hose. I put it right on the pump here on the Christmas tree, so that's 3/8. And the other end of the hose is actually 1/4 inch, so it goes right on the system. There's no Schraders in these hoses. I only use these for evacuation. So if I'm going to run this setup, you got to use Schrader core removal tools, and I prefer the Appions. It's a nice piece. This setup here may be a little bit overkill for a residential setup when you're only dealing with 3 or 4 pounds of refrigerant, but if you're on a larger tonnage system and you're talking about evacuating a system that holds a couple 100 pounds of refrigerant, this definitely speeds things up big time. Like I said, I've never had any issues. A lot of guys give me crap about this Christmas tree setup. I've never had an issue with it leaking, nothing like that, and I just prefer to run these 3/8 hoses, and that gives me two 3/8 fittings here and here. Micron gauge, I prefer the analog style. It's thermal. It comes with you can change these different sensors out, you can calibrate them. I've had good luck with it. I prefer these over the digital ones. It seems like the digital ones bounce around a lot. Just again, personal preference. I trust the analog style over the digital. As far as I've also heard guys say you shouldn't put the micron gauge right on the pump. This is why I prefer this method. So once I think I'm good and I want to check the system's evacuation, I'll close. Obviously this would be open if my pump was running. I would close this. I would close this. I'm sorry. Yeah, we'd close that. So I've got 2 points of isolation. I highly doubt both of these valves are going to be leaking by, right? And so if I've got everything shut, I'm just reading, this would be open. So my vacuum gauge is now reading this hose and this hose only. Everything else below that tree is isolated. So that means I'm reading my system through my 2 hoses. If I thought I had a leak and it started rising, I could come over here, and to figure out which side of the system it's on, I could close the low side. And so right now, my micron gauge would just be reading the high side only because I got the low side shut, and vice versa. I could have this open and I could shut the high side. And that way, I would just be reading this hose from the micron gauge. So you can kind of go back and forth. You can see which side of the system's deeper. If one side's pulling down deeper than the other, maybe you've got some moisture, maybe you've got a leak, so on and so forth. Again, a lot of this is personal preference. Everybody's got their own way of doing things. This is just what has worked for me for a number of years. This is what I like running. And that's that. Thanks.